Hey there guys, last time we made this basic website that you can see here behind me, just using HTML. We looked at a lot of tags like headers, lists, images, hyperlinks, tables. Today we're going to actually make it look a little bit nicer. But we're going to start off by doing this on a completely blank page. Back here we're going to make a new text document, or you can do it the other way shown in the first video. And this one is going to be called page 2. No spaces, just page 2, HTML. Do you want to make this? Yes, we do. And I'll go ahead and open that up in VS Code. Now we know the basic layout. We always start with a doc type, followed by the big sandwich of HTML, the two internal sections of the head and the body. It's always best practice to, in the head, set a title, and we'll call this one page 2. And in the body we can start to do the layouts. When we're making bigger, more complex websites, it'll be really quick and easy to have a basic layout with the navigation, the footer, and some content things that are going to be on most, if not every page made, and we can literally copy and paste that to each new HTML document that we make. But just to make sure it's working, we're going to put in two things. One is going to be a hyperlink, so we'll write A. This meant to do a slash A. This hyperlink is going to be in the form of an H1 tag, so a header. So the hyperlink, the A tags, are fully encompassing this H1 tag. So this is going to be a link back to page 1. Like we said, the A tag doesn't actually do anything unless we tell it a reference, a hyperlink reference, to where it's going. In this case, it can just look inside the folder and it should be able to find index.html. So let's save this and we'll open it up. So we can open it up by just double clicking it. Get rid of that picture of a jellyfish and this home page. We now have a link back to page 1. And it's taken us back to here. Alright, so on this page, at the very top, before Hello World, we're in fact going to put a link to page 2, just to avoid any confusion later on. So I still have that document open here. It's going to come before all of these headings. And it's going to be exactly the same. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste this. Except it's going to say page 2. And the link, the hyperlink reference, is not going to be to index, because we're on index. It's going to be to page2.html. So now when I save this, refresh my page, I have a link back to page 2. Maybe I should change back and just get rid of it. Link to page 2, and that'll take us here. So we're going to do our styling on this page to start off with, and then we'll have a look at styling some of the elements we already made here. Alright, so in our folder we need to make a styling sheet, and you'll do this through VS Code the same way we made the HTML documents if you're using a Mac. So right click, new text document. This one is going to be called style.css. Do you want to make it? Sure do. And we're going to go ahead and open this up in VS Code. Now, you can call your pages whatever you want and your style sheets, as long as the home page is called index, because most web hosting services search for index.html or index.php and push those forward as the home page. And your style sheets, it's generally best practice to have one style sheet that's the master for everything, and then a second style sheet that's specific to each page. If they have a few little things, that way your main style sheet doesn't have just weird little sections in it that are only relevant here and there. Anyway, this is the style sheet, style.css. It is blank, and unlike this, we don't have to do any setup. How the style sheet works is quite cool. You literally say what section or what tag you want to affect, and then how you want to affect it. For instance, on our page 2, we have a few tags. We've got this body tag, the HTML tag, the head tag, the title tag, the A tag, and the H1 tag. We could affect specifically the H1 tag by just writing the word H1, squiggly brackets. So this is looking for the H1 thing. And then we can say what we want to do to it in here, and we'll have a look at some of these later on. For instance, we might want to change the we'll change the font size to begin with, and we can choose one of these preset sizes, or we can manually write 100 pixels is the general size that you can use for this. So let's Control S, save that. This won't yet do anything though. I could go here, I could refresh this all day, but it's not actually changing. That's because I need to tell my HTML page to look at the style sheet. So I need to link it to my style sheet. How do I link that? I start off with the text link, REL for relative, or what is it that I'm looking at, or sorry, relationship. It is a style sheet. Then I need to specify where it is with a hyperlink reference. And it's in the same folder, but it's called style.css. So looking at my web page, if I refresh it, boom. It's now applying this rule that I've made that all H1 tags should have a font size of 100. So it's very, very big. I could try to change the color, but this H1 tag is actually inside of something else. So this something else is overruling anything that's done to it. That's this A tag. So I want all A tags to have the color, no use because this is American-ish, of this shark. That one. This weird green. So now when I refresh it, it is that aggressively bright green color. If I want to get rid of this underline, or A tags, because that's what added the underline, it needs to have text decoration set to none. Underline gone. Still a link, my hands are still showing up, but the underline is gone. This will still link me back. All gone. Now, like I said, one of the most important things is those div tags, and we're going to have a look at them in just a second on this page too. But firstly, let's change the background. Now, like I said, everything is showing up on the body. So I'm going to make a section, and because it's the biggest, most important section, I'm going to put it right at the top. Body. I want it to have a background color of, and I'm going to make it black. So everything that's light will stand out. So back over here, I'll refresh it, black background. I'm then going to go ahead and add some of those divs just to see how they work. So I'll leave this at the top, and I'm going to add just after it a div. And this div is going to be, just have the text in it using a H2 tag, division 1. So division 1, we have made this div and we've given it some content. So it will show up on our page if we have a look. Although we can't really see it because the text is default black. So we're going to say that we want all text on our web page to be white. All text is inside of this body tag. So we can just say, hey body, can everything inside of you be colored? And we'll pick a 0 because it's close enough to white and on that list. So now when we reset, Did I accidentally write ION? I did. Ooh. All text is white unless it has an additional rule in that document that's overriding it. This is why this is still green. Okay, so what is so cool about divs? I said they're the backbone of websites, or if I didn't, I meant to. And this is why. Divs, like I said, can be used as building blocks. This div here, at the moment, is only this big. It could take up the entire length of this section. It could take up this block here. And we can put another div next to it. Divs are the most malleable things inside of this, and it's really easy to place them all together like Lego. To get a better outlook of this, we need to make these divs unique. And each unique div needs a unique name. So this div at the moment isn't very unique. I'm just going to go down a couple lines because it's just a div. We need to give it a class. Its class is going to be, well, whatever we want to call it. And this one we're just going to call, generally you'd call it whatever's going to be inside of it. At the moment we're just going to call them divisions 1, 2, 3, and 4. No spaces. And then over here to signal that we want to address that class, we just write dot and then the class name. Squigglies. Now, what do we want to do to division 1? Well, we want to see what it actually looks like. To see what it looks like, we're going to add a border, double dot, of a certain size. We'll make it 2 pixels, space, of a certain color. We'll make it red so it stands out, space, and of a certain style. And this could be solid, dashed, and a dotted, a bunch of other things. We'll just make it solid. Semicolon. Border's a weird one because it does need 3 pieces of information to actually be made. We can save that. Now back in Unity, back in the browser, this is division 1. So it's taking up this section here. This is what it actually looks like. We can say that it is actually missing a little bit of space on the sides here, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But we can say we want this to only take up half of the page. Okay, we want division 1 to, instead of going all the way, we want its width to only be 50% of the page. And now it only goes to halfway. We could say we want division 1 to be taller. Cool. We can change its height to be 400 pixels. Now it's a taller box. We could say that we want division 1 to have a background color that's different to the rest of the page. Awesome. Division 1 is going to have a background color, which is, instead of being black, it's going to be a gray. We could say that we want division 1 to be opaque. Fine. Opacity, 50%. That's affecting everything inside division 1, including the text. But the important thing is that because we gave it a name, we can go ahead and make a second division, and none of the same styling will be applied to it. So if I go ahead and I'm going to copy this division, oops, but I'm still going to write division 2 and call it division 2. Division 2 has none of the stylings that division 1 had. It's just this white text at the moment. If we give it the same styling rule set as division 1 by giving it the class name division 1, even though the text inside says division 2, boom, it's another one. I'll style the same way as division 1 because it's got the same class name, although it's a unique thing because it's got division 2 written in it. So as we're starting to see, we can use these as building blocks to make more and more interesting parts of our website. Now, one thing I did mention is that there's a little gap here, and that's actually quite annoying. There's a cool thing that's added by default, and that's called padding and margins. Now let's have a look at what those are. I'm going to turn this class back to division 2 just so that we're not messing with it at the moment, and we can see what that looks like. Just to see, that's gone back. So we want division 1 to have some padding. We'll add padding and 50 pixels. So let's see what that does. If we refresh this page, we notice that inside the actual division box, it's even pushed itself over a little bit. It's got 50 pixels here, 50 pixels here. You can't exactly see it, but it's got 50 pixels here and 50 pixels here. So it's gone ahead and it's made itself a little bit bigger. Another thing that can also be added instead of padding is the word margin. What margin does is the opposite. It's pushed itself over, but not internally added space. 50 pixels there, 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 and there. So in doing so, we can do some pretty unique things with these divs. I want division 1 and 2 to be next to each other though. They're both meant to be 50% of the width of the page. So why aren't they next to each other? Oh, I'll turn the styling of this back to division 1 in a minute. I want this to be up here and looking like this. By default, the body section has some padding and margin attached to it. So if we set the padding to be 0 and that margin to be 0, and we can get rid of the margin here, what we should see is that it's hard up against the edge of the web page now. There's no gap between it and the edge. And because of that, if I turn this border off, because that's adding a little bit of space, and a comment in CSS looks like this: /*, and then at the end, */. Because it's green, it's not being read as code. So that's the border being turned off. Boop. And I'm going to add division 1 styling to our second one, so they look the same. They are now right up and down next to each other. But we want them to be in line. There's actually one more little bit of code that we need to write, and we'll look at that right now. They have the amount of space, they can both fit next to each other, but we just need to say that we want them to sit next to each other. And that's done with this word here, display. Now, there's heaps of different displays, and they can get really insane. This is probably one of the most important keywords. But what we're going to look at is this one, inline block. So when we save and reload the page, there's now no gap here. And now that we've gotten rid of that space between them two vertically, we know that they can be as close to each other so that there's no space showing between. We know that 50% plus 50% equals 100% of the page. There's just one more line of code, and I keep saying there's one more, and that is we need to float them so that they are floating around, so that they're willing to be moved to the left. Now, in general, you always float to the left because things naturally go to the left-hand side of the page. So it shouldn't make any visual difference. This is now floating to the left-hand side of this thing when you do that. So the 3 lines, once again, to actually make them go next to each other is width 50%, display inline block so that they're willing to be in line with each other, and float to the left so that they'll float right next to each other. As long as your body has no padding or margins, that'll work just fine. So now that we know that divs can be lined up like this, we can start to do more and more creative things. And in that space, make them look very unique. One of the main things that you use a div for is the navigation section at the top, the header section after it, however you want to display your content on the way down, and then of course a footer div down the bottom. The main these normally are just called the sections instead of div, but we can use divs for this learning exercise. So now we've got division 1, division 2, and this can have its own styling later on. We can start to add more and more divs and style them however we please. But like I said, we should have a look at our original page and how to make that look a little bit nicer. So if we go back, this currently looks like this. We want to link it to our style sheet. We're going to use the same style sheet. Just save that. And that's done once again by writing link relationship. It's called a style sheet. And a hyperlink reference to where we're looking, which is called style.css. That'll have some drastic changes right away because we have styled the h1 tags to look like this, to be 100 pixels big, and we've styled every single hyperlink, like this one and this one, to be green. Also, by default, all the text is white and the background is black. So what we're going to look at doing is, firstly, this image. It's very big, and I want to make it a little bit smaller. So how I'll do that is, because I probably have multiple images on my page, I want that image, which is right here, to be a special one. So I'm going to identify it by giving it a class. This is going to be called jellyfish. If I wanted all of my images to be styled similarly, I'd give them all the same class name. So over in here, after the stuff, we'll write .jellyfish. Now I don't know if I had the capital F, so I'll have to check. I did. And then squiggly brackets. We want to change its width to be, let's write 30% of the entire page width. Yeah, a bit smaller. And I want its height to be about 50% of what it is. Now, maybe about 200 pixels. So let's have a look at how to do that. If I just write height 200 pixels, we get this. Squirt! Now that's a bit of a squished jellyfish. So we're going to need to fit that image to the size of this box that we've made for it. So if you just write fit, you will find object fit, and these are different ways that we can fit it in. So contain is your default. It will make the object fit within the box, this invisible parameter, so that the image isn't cropped or altered in any way. If we write cover, which is the one I normally use for most things, it will crop out the top bit of the image and the bottom bit of the image, just leaving the middle section. Or if it was vertically, it'll crop out the sides. This generally leaves the best image because it gets rid of irrelevant stuff. Normally, depending on what you're doing. If you use fill, it will do another stretch. It'll make your image stretch to the size of your container. And then we have none, which is going to do nothing, and scale down, and a few others. I'm going to leave it as cover because I like the look of that. There we go. Now this little table here could really use some outlines to actually show what's going on. So we want to affect the table. We know it's got the tag table, and we're going to put some outlines around it, which are borders. Border 1px, I'll make it white so it stands out, and I'll make it solid. We'll have a look at some of the other border styles here as well. So now the outline of the entire table is done. We want to outline all of these rows. So we know that they have the tag tr. We will once again just steal it this time. But instead of a solid, we're going to make this dotted. And we'll refresh. Okay. Alright, now we want to affect the data and the headers. So we'll affect both the table data and, by just putting a space in, the table headers. What this is, oh sorry, and with a comma. So now it's affecting the table data section and the table header section. We are going to put in another border, so I'll just copy this. But instead of doing solid lines, we'll use dashed lines. Now there are all these dashed little sections around here. We notice that there's not a lot of space between the border and the text, so we'll add some padding to them. Padding. We want padding to be applied to all of the sides, so we don't have to specify top, left, right, or anything like that. And we're just going to add 20 pixels of padding. This will make it significantly bigger to each side. There we go. So now the table is a lot easier to read. One more thing we will look at is how we can apply hover effects. And we'll apply a hover effect to this list here. Now, we know that this list here is an ordered list because it's got numbers instead of bullet points. So we'll specify to our ordered list, double dot, when it is hovered over, we want the color of it to be, and we'll pick a nice weird color, deep pink. So we'll save that. Look back over here and refresh. Nothing's changed, but when I hover over this list, it now changes to deep pink. Remember, this list here is taking up the entire length of this section here. So we can go up and down, however you please. Alright. If we wanted this list to change font depending on what list item we went over, we could specify or change size. Our ordered list, list items, notice that there's a space, not a comma. We want when they're hovered over, their font size to be, and we'll write 20 pixels. So now I'll refresh it, I'll hover over the list. When I hover over it, all of it's turned pink, but now when I hover over individual list items, they are increasing. They're not hyperlinked, so I can't click on them or anything, but that is a way of doing that. This is often seen in the navigation system of pages and things like that. Now your task should be out for you, and that is to try to create a page using the skills that we've now learnt in CSS and HTML. Good luck to you with that.